right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Landi Rosenau. Landi, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Now, if you can start off, can you walk us through your journey from where you started in dentistry to where you are today? What key moments or decisions helped shape the direction of your practice?
Ooh, okay. I have a long tail. So I actually started out in the medical field as a nurse.
Hmm.
So I was an ER nurse. My husband at the time was a dentist. So I had gone through, I was an ER nurse. I knew I wanted to expand my career, but I loved being super hands-on. I loved the patient interaction. I also was an ER nurse. And so I spent my whole shifts working on people and never knowing what happened to them. So I felt this big void. And so during that time as a nurse, I was also very involved in his practices. So I would go to leadership things. I was learning about dentistry. I was just exposed to dentistry from a non-clinical side. He owned a couple of practices, so I would just see things. I would go to conferences with him. So that kind of exposed me to dentistry. And then he just made the comment one day, have you ever thought about dental school? And I was like, no. But then it checked all those boxes. So it allowed me to have lifelong patient care. It allowed me to diagnose and do. I'm, I think, creative by nature. So it gave me that creative aspect. So it really fulfilled a lot of the things I think I wanted out of my career. And so, yeah,
Mm.
I went back to school to do some prereqs and then applied to school. Right out of school, I just took an associateship at a general practice. It was great. I loved it. I actually, right out of school, believe it or not, didn't think I wanted to own. I thought I wanted to just do the associate life because I had seen a lot of ownership, how much time it took, the pressures of that. I was like, oh, I think I just want to be a doctor and do that. But then COVID hit and I realized I didn't necessarily love the way the doctor that I was working for managed that situation. And I realized in that moment that I had invested so much in my career and I didn't really have a lot of control over myself or my employees at that point. And so I kind of was like, oh, well, maybe I do need to do something where I'm a part of it. And I don't really know why I decided to do a scratch start versus buying. I had a couple friends who suggested it, and I kind of wanted to create a space that was uniquely mine. And that's what led to it. I met a great developer with a great banker who was willing to give me the cash post-COVID, and here we are.
Okay, awesome. So then, if we rewind a little bit, you start off as a nurse. What was nursing not fulfilling for you? But if we can categorize it like into a specific, maybe emotion or thought process. I know you were thinking once you saw the patient, then you didn't know what happened to them. So to you, what was it not fulfilling?
I think it was not fulfilling that continuity of care, that lifespan of care, like
Mm.
ever knowing if anything you did made a difference. Or I love people, but I would rarely see someone twice. And so it wasn't fulfilling that relationship aspect. Also, I didn't feel like it was challenging me enough to my ability because nursing, which nurses are amazing, but we're taking doctor's orders, right? We're always
Mm.
doing what someone else tells us. So it took that aspect of diagnosis out of it for me, which as I think about it, that's what I feel like my full potential wasn't being fulfilled by being a nurse. And I think in the hours, we were working shift work. You were on your feet 12 hours. It was go, 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 go. So I think some element of quality of life I felt was missing from that role.
Interesting. Okay. So then fast forward, you went into dental school, graduated, took an associateship. What were some things from your associateship that you feel were amazing? You're like, I'm going to take these systems and I'm going to implement it in my own business one day or my own practice. And then what were some things that you felt were, I never want to do this?
So from the associateship, I do feel overall it was doctor led. So I learned to be a leader. And I think the doctor being a leader in every way was really good. And
Mhm.
so that role, I do think they also did monthly meetings where they set a lot of goals and followed through on the progress of each goal. Each team member was responsible for tracking a certain goal. And so I really liked that. The whole team was involved in the goals and everyone knew how every single goal was, where it was at every day. And so I really liked that. They also did morning huddles every day and talked about where production goals were, where new patient goals were at. specific needs of the patients on the schedule, insurance issues. And so I really liked that morning huddle routine. So everyone got on the same page. If there was any outlying concerns, those were discussed. So I really liked those aspects of that position. Things I didn't like, the doctors were really very uninvolved in treatment planning. I think finances, it's great for doctors to be not a part of. I learned a lot from that associate. There's not a lot of negatives that I would really take away from it. I had a lot of autonomy. I had a lot of opportunity to learn and grow. The owning doctor did have a large skill set, so I had the opportunity to learn from him. So I definitely didn't leave that feeling a lot of negatives.
Interesting. Okay, so then when you mentioned more part of the financing process, did you feel like, hey, we just leave it to a treatment coordinator and then we left the room kind of a thing? Or
Yeah, and I feel like obviously when it comes to money, I like to build my treatment plans because I like to be involved with sequencing. I've just spent that time talking to the patient. I know their needs, and I like to build my treatment plans. And I think clinically being a part of them helps for improved outcomes and sequencing. When the actual dollar conversation happens, sure, I step out of the room. But I like to be really present, make sure I have the flow of them right, make sure all questions are answered. So I just didn't feel that as treatment plans were kind of discussed on the way out, where we sit them down, make it more of a conversation so that everything is thoroughly understood and is meeting the patient's goals.
So can you break it down for me? How do you do your treatment planning to ensure like the acceptance rate is, I mean, do you know your percentage acceptance rate? Like, where is it
I
at?
don't know our exact percentage, but I would say we're 75 plus for sure. We don't have an extensive unscheduled treatment list. We're really good. And actually, that's where we struggle at this time of the year is because we've exhausted everyone's benefits, right? Like we are maxing people out. And so we don't really have that like, hey, you have benefits remaining because we are really good at using that. So for us, our process is they come in through the doctor side for new patient visits. So they come in, my assistants take all the necessary x-rays, intraoral photos. We have a really great smile and aesthetics questionnaire, and then we have just a general dental questionnaire. So they gather all of that information. Then typically at that point, a hygienist will come in to do the periodontal exam and typically, if appropriate, the cleaning. While she's doing that, then that's the opportunity for me to connect with my assistant. Look at all the images, look at all the photos, talk about what did the patient say about their goals, their worries, what's their chief complaint, why are they here, XYZ. We even ask questions about timeline. So now they're getting their teeth cleaned. I'm taking in all this information. I'm looking at everything. So I had that opportunity to preliminarily put a treatment plan together in the sequence that I think makes sense based on all the things they said. If we need to do an orthodontic treatment plan, like say they've mentioned clear aligners, XYZ, that's all ready to roll. So I had the opportunity to build that while the patient's having their teeth cleaned. Then I go in, obviously I speak to the hygienist before I go in, just in case there's anything I didn't miss. I go in, I do my intraoral exam. Obviously we talk, we introduce ourselves, we chat. I do an intraoral exam just to make sure nothing is missing. And then I set them up and then we just review everything. I confirm usually how I approach it is I say, this assistant, so I'll use one of my assistants, her name is Sabrine. So Sabrine told me XYZ about this, all of these things. So I try to make sure the patient understands that I've heard everything she's told me. So I really try to reinforce that we're listening, that we're hearing what they've said. And I usually say, did we miss anything? Did I get that right? And most of the time, I think my assistants do an amazing job. And they like, no. And I said, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you have questions about? And then usually, if there is, then we discuss that. But at that point, I go over my treatment recommendations. We'll have the x-rays on the screen. We do have AI x-rays too that are AI reading, which helps, if you're showing leakage under a crown or periodontal height, anything. So it's just an extra tool. So we go over everything. I give them the different treatment options, give them my suggestions, hear what they have to say, tell them my sequencing thought based on their feedback. And then usually our goal is to have the first visit scheduled before they leave. And so it's very rare that we don't have the next visit on the calendar when they leave, excluding hygiene, like their first treatment visit.
Okay, no, I love that. So then in the questionnaire that you mentioned, I know you said it's pretty basic, but what's involved in the questionnaire that is unique or tells you a lot where you can dive deeper? Maybe there's like a specific question where we can dive deeper.
So the aesthetic questionnaire definitely asks, like, are you happy with the color, the shape, the alignment of your teeth, the basic questions. But then we ask a question, we ask about timeline. What is your timeline for wanting to get these things done? We also ask them if you could change anything about your smile, what would it be? So just really open-ended questions. Because someone may say, well, no, I don't like the shape, color, and positioning of my teeth. However, timeline, that's just not realistic right now. I have 3 kids in college, right? So I think that's what's a little unique is about the timeline, because that right there tells us if there's a barrier to treatment that instantly we know. But yeah, it's a basic questionnaire. Our dental questionnaires have got a lot of the normal stuff just to help diagnose and maybe streamline some other things like, are they using fluoride toothpaste? Do they clench and grind? Do they have a history of sleep apnea? Things like that, just to identify other little areas of the practice that we could maybe dive in to help with some of their oral health care needs.
Gotcha. So then the timeline question, what has been like 1 or 2 of the most common barriers? And do you have like a script to go over those barriers, or is it just we leave it at that and we can move on?
Oh, no, I think most barriers, if you identify them, are overcomable, right? Like even financial barriers, if you identify them, they're overcomable, right? So, okay, I've got kids at college. Okay, what could you maybe invest in your smile this year, right? So it just allows us to streamline that. Anxiety, if that's, well, oh, a timeline, oh, I don't know, I'm stressed about being at the dentist. Okay, here's ways we can help you with anxiety. Or my son's having surgery. I want to wait until he's through that. And so then we know, okay, well, when's your son's surgery? Oh, he's having it in November. Perfect. Why don't we get you on the schedule for the end of November that gets you through the surgery? Things like that. So if we know what's potentially preventing a patient from scheduling, I do definitely feel, and that's why I'm pretty involved with the treatment planning, because, okay, when I know the barriers, I think with some of my life experience, I can say, okay, well, how about this? You know, the girls they're younger and they're not necessarily as great at that. But that's, I think, probably why I like to be a little more involved with that conversation is identifying those barriers. I went to a leadership course, gosh, decades ago. And that was one of the things they talked about as being so important was just identifying those barriers and helping the patient find solution. Most all of them, as far as treatment acceptance, are overcomable if you are creative in your thinking.
I like that. Creative in your thinking. So then you said your assistants, they do an amazing job at this, but do they ever overstep or are they ever too quiet? And how did you help them with that process?
So they're like a spectrum. I have one who is very quiet and really just follows the rules and probably doesn't dive deep enough. I have one who's middle of the road. She's very friendly. But so the first who's quiet, she still gets all the information. She probably doesn't engage as much as the other 2, but she sees more of my treatment patients because she's amazing in methodology, so she's great with like crowns and everything else. So she sees the new patients for that reason. The other 2 are just very social. They're very talkative and they just do such a great job at making the patient feel comfortable. We always ask, we have a little thing in our notes, like something interesting about the patient. So they're just great at getting those details. Both the 2 that predominantly see the new patients are very social, very good communicators in respect to just gathering that information. They're great with x-rays, so they're just really good at it. So I'm very, very lucky.
Gotcha. Okay. So then to you, what is a great communicator in the sense of like where they're able to extract a lot of good gems from the patient?
I think a great communicator is number one, just helping the patient feel comfortable, right? Going on their level. So if someone isn't super social, someone doesn't want to talk, they need to adjust to that person's style. So I think they're really good at that. If it's someone who's just here, then they know not to go overboard into some of these questions. But if someone really needs every single, like I'm about to take an x-ray, like they really feed off of the patient's energy well. And so I think that's really important in communication is understanding what the patients themselves need. And they listen really well. We use laminates, so we're tree friendly. So they just put their little notes down, right? And so they're listening. It's easy for them to listen and take notes while still engaging the patient. I think that's really important, is to adjust to the patient's communication style and listen really well.
I love that. Okay, awesome. So then we fast forward a little bit and you decided to start your own practice because of the associateship that you were in. You didn't love the situation on how the doctor managed, I guess, COVID. What was happening, if you don't mind me asking?
So I know there was the COVID loan, or I don't even remember what it was, the relief loan, but we all got put, like everyone lost their job. All the associate doctors had to sign like a contract, like we owe you nothing. So it's kind of like, see ya. So we kind of all got nothing. And so no protection. And I had been there for 4 years at that point. I had invested a lot in that practice, a lot in those patients. And I really had, in my opinion, helped grow that practice. I wasn't obviously the sole person responsible for that, and then I was like, literally, like nothing. I had no safety net, no security of anything. And so that's what really got me thinking. I was like, wow, I just was really disappointed with how much I invested in someone else's business for me to just be essentially, it felt like worthless at the time. I was like, that was just really eye-opening for me, even though prior to that point, I had never felt that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was more at that moment you felt like you were just kicked to the curb, and then you're like, now what? What do we do? And so at that moment is where you were thinking, all right, I got to start my own thing, or were you more like, I got to find another associateship?
Correct. So I got another associate job, and almost kind of same-ish time as when the wheels started turning with how do I change my trajectory? And so started the new associate job while also starting to plan and build my startup.
Nice. Okay. And now your startup is currently located where?
So we're in Indian Land, South Carolina. It's kind of a little suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. So then what type of practice do you currently run, and how has it evolved over time? Is it like PPOs only, HMO, fee for service, pediatric?
So general dentistry, where we do try to keep a lot of even specialty procedures in-house, and heavily PPO.
Okay. Heavily. And that was a decision.
It was a decision from the start, and it was a decision made to help fuel patients at the beginning. I don't really know why I didn't go fee for service, other than I just felt it safer to go PPO to start.
Okay. Okay. No, that's good. So then general PPO, and then how has it evolved? So you opened up when?
2021.
Okay. So how has it evolved over time?
Ooh, as far as like the PPO?
Just in general, the practice, like how have you seen it grow, stagnate, or?
Yeah, no, growth I've been happy with growth. I would say I would have maybe wanted it a little bit more. We should produce about 1.1 million this year, or collecting close to that. So I'm pretty happy with that. We see about 30 to 45 patients a month. A lot of our growth has been through word of mouth and referrals. So I'm okay with that, but I also feel like our overall patient numbers are a little low. We have had, I would say, a reasonable amount of attrition too. A lot of patients who have moved from the area and things like that. So it's like we're growing, but then we shrink. We grow, we shrink. And I don't entirely know what the industry norms are for attrition. I feel like ours is normal, maybe to a little bit on the higher side, but maybe we feel that impact more because we've been growing, and so you feel that more since you're smaller. That makes sense too. So overall, I'm happy with the growth. Our procedures, we've added a few procedures. We've gotten better at a lot of things. Our internal systems obviously have become unbelievably better because you don't know what you don't know. And so you realize that. Yeah, I think we've had good, steady growth, and profitability is slowly starting to creep up with that too.
Okay, nice. Now you mentioned internal systems. What is a system in your practice that you consider unique or particularly effective, and how has it contributed to the way your practice operates and scales?
So we have really good communication systems. They're like our laminate clipboards is really what I taught them. We have just a basic, it's similar to a routing slip, but it has everything to do with, does the patient have new insurance? Have they paid? Is their treatment plan signed? Has recare schedule? Is next treatment? Like every possible thing. the appropriate radiographs in the chart for insurance attachments. It was a pretty decent, everything, right? That's there and it's color coded by department. And so my office manager gets them, like she doesn't close the patient out until that clip bar comes back. And then same thing with our new patient visits. It's got all those questionnaires. So as far as our recare and our unscheduled treatment, we have really great spreadsheets that have tasks assigned to them that then coincide with notes in the charts that, okay, if they're not doing this crown, why are they not doing it? Or if they're overdue for recare, why? How many times have we called them? When have we called them? What have they said? So I really feel like our inter-office communications between each other are excellent. I can pull up a sheet if I have a question about John Smith and why he didn't schedule his crown. I can look on that form. Oh, he's out of town or he canceled because XYZ. So I think that's really helpful. And I think we do a really good job with that. We have texting with our patients, which allows our patients to communicate really well with us. And so I think our communication system, it's a lot of laminates, it's a lot of checking boxes, it's a lot of color coding, but it works.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you noticed that if texting is better than phone calls now for patients?
No, and yes, depends. If it's to confirm an appointment, absolutely. Yep, I'll be there. But if it's about scheduling treatment, I personally still feel that calling a patient is just better. But I do feel on a whole, patients do respond quicker to texting. I just don't love the idea of, hey, we talked about you getting that crown done. When would you like to schedule? I just don't love the idea of doing that via text. I still like the personal touch and I like the girls to call on unscheduled treatment. Maybe a personal thing. I could be wrong as far as patient perception, but I know myself and I'm kind of at that middle of the road demographic of like our patient population. I know I personally am going to be way more likely if someone calls me to engage, like, oh yes, I've been thinking about that. If a text, I'll forget. Not that I don't want to schedule the treatment. I just know with my busy life, it's not going to happen. But that being said, most patients often don't answer their phones. So it's not as likely we'll get them via phone call, but if we do, it's very likely we will get them scheduled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If it's a phone call, would you text them like, hey, it's us trying to reach you?
Correct.
Okay.
If we say we've called them and we left a voicemail, they'll leave the voicemail. Hey, this is Martha. I'm just calling to see if you want to get that screen scheduled, XYZ. Because a lot of times if a patient doesn't schedule, we also, on our communication forms, we make it time. We ask the patient, would you like us to follow up with you? And they usually say yes. Okay, when would you like us to do that? So if they say next week, so say, okay, perfect. We'll call you next Wednesday or Thursday. On that Wednesday or Thursday, if we haven't got them scheduled, Martha will call, hey, it's just Martha calling about getting that treatment scheduled. And then correct, she will then follow up her voicemail with a, hey, I just left you a voicemail about trying to get that scheduled. That's typically our process. But we try to let the patient pick when they want us to call to help it not seem like we're hounding them to get scheduled.
Yeah, like continuing to call and continuing to call. Interesting. So then you mentioned the new patient form, the visit and everything like that. If you can walk us through the new patient visit, do you collect all that information beforehand?
All the insurance information is collected and we have certain things that we always make sure we use an external verification service. So we have a really thorough breakdown of benefits, especially with a lot of the treatments that we know we might do. And so we get a very thorough breakdown of benefits. So we're super prepared for that when treatment planning comes. So say orthodontics, say they mention that, or say they mention an implant. We know exactly whether they have coverage or not. So we don't have to worry about a delay in conversation. Oh, you don't have coverage on orthodontics. We can have that conversation right away. So just all of the background information. But as far as the small questionnaire and all that, no, we like to have that conversation with the patient. We don't like to send and bombard them with too many forms before arriving because HIPAA and the health history forms and all that is already a lot.
Yeah. So do you have online scheduling? Like they can just schedule online?
Yeah.
Does that happen often? Like people do?
Oh, yeah. For new patients and like emergency new patient visits, absolutely. Yeah. A lot, actually. It's wonderful.
Okay. So when they click it, they schedule it, it goes straight to your practice management system. They don't have to fill out a whole form?
No, a basic few questions. So say Actually, it doesn't matter if it's a new patient comprehensive or if it's a new patient for emergency. They'll click, it asks pretty general, do you have insurance? Do you not? And then our software offers them some times. Our system gets flagged that someone scheduled out online, and the message will say that the appointment is not confirmed until our team has reached out to verify. Because we do have a scheduling and cancellation policy. The patients do have to sign to hold a spot on our schedule. And then we like to run just a basic insurance verification where we hop on the portal to make sure they said that they have Delta. Yep, they have Delta. It's active, because with this company we use, we do get charged for false ones, like if they gave us the wrong insurance verification. So we just make sure the insurance they put on the portal is actually active and accurate, not the full breakdown. And then they just have to sign our cancellation policy. And then, yeah, and they're on the schedule, and then off to the races.
Okay. And that's even new patients.
Oh, yeah, new patients. We don't allow any treatment scheduling online. It's only actually for new patients and emergency patients. Treatment is all scheduled in-house, because I think that would get really hairy really fast.
Yeah. No, big time. What is the external verification service?
It's Wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay. And so you guys do the check, not the full breakdown. Now, do you ever see the cancellation policy as like a barrier? For example, like, do you charge them, or?
No, we don't. We talked about that, and because I do feel that, yes, being charged to hold a new patient spot would absolutely be a barrier. So what our new patient language is, we will happily hold this time for you. We do set aside a lot of time for this new patient visit, for all the x-rays, the doctor's time, all of these things. So we ask that if you make this appointment and you cannot keep it, that you give us at least 7 days notice, because in between insurance verifications and all that stuff, that takes a couple business days. And then if they don't give us that notification, we do reserve the right to charge them at that time, or to require a deposit for a rescheduling. So say they scheduled a new patient visit for 2 weeks from now. We went through all the processes, they signed everything, we got everything, but 2 days before they canceled. We, at that time, to fill that 1.5 to 2 hour spot, that is hard to fill in 2 days, right? So we reserve the right, and that's on there, and they do have to put credit card information on that form, and they return it. And so that language is on there. It, on a whole, has been maybe a 0.5% barrier. It does not deter people, because we give them tons of time to change their mind. So that then gives us time to fill the schedule. And it's not like we're completely unrealistic. We do have the language in there that we understand emergencies happen. We understand people get sick. And so I think we're gracious, because we can tell if someone calls us and they're deathly ill. We understand that things happen. So no, I absolutely do not feel that's been a barrier. Actually, my front office gal was telling me today, she scheduled like 10 new patients today, all of them, 0 issue.
Yeah, that's good. That's really nice. And so the charge that you put on the patient, if they did, let's just say like, yeah, charge my card. How much is that?
It's $100 for a no-show.
Okay.
Or it's $100 if for any visit, actually. So any hygiene visit, new patient visit, exam visit, or visit under $1,000, I believe it is. Maybe it's $1,500. Any rescheduling cancellation within 7 days is a $100 fee. Any treatment over $1,500 requires a scheduling deposit, period. If they don't reschedule within the 7 days, they forfeit that deposit, and they are potentially at risk for the $100 charge too. But it works. It's sure, there are definitely people that it deters, and people may wait to schedule their treatment because of finances, but those are going to be the people that wouldn't show up that day anyways, because if they can't afford it when they schedule, you know what I mean? And so it really hasn't been a deterrent. We have had to keep 0 deposits that people have made for treatment.
Nice.
It is a heavy policy, and we definitely have gotten some commentary like, whoo, you guys are laying down the law. But prior to it having it, we would have a bridge case fall off, and then there's nothing to do. And it just, your whole schedule that's gone. Or hygiene, I feel like people don't understand the climate of hygiene right now. Hygienists are very expensive, and it's hard to retain really good hygienists. And if people are like, oh, can I just come next week? Like, and your schedule falls apart, it's a really big deal. And then we
Mm-hmm.
do the insurance verification. We've paid for the hygienist to be there, and we haven't been able to schedule someone else. And so as a business, yes, it may deter some people, but on a whole, I think it makes our patients realize like this is a valuable service you're getting. And all we want you to do is show up. And if you have things happen, just give us some time to help find you a better time. And
Mm-hmm.
we start our calls 2 weeks prior. We reach out via text, via email, via phone to confirm everything ourselves too multiple times. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like we're not doing our part as far as follow through too in all the way.
Interesting.
It's huge on communication. Even with this business, there's been vendors or services that I've had and they let me fall through the cracks and say was missing hygiene. I'd make all efforts to make sure our patients are followed up with. If they let us know or they don't after a certain amount of time, sure, we let them go. But communication is really big. We call patients after all major procedures. We follow up. If someone came in for a bite adjustment, we check in a couple days later. Hey, did that help? Is it feeling better? Huge on that. And every single person in this office has a different part of that communication loop that they're responsible for.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. So then that probably contributes to a lot of the referrals and what you were mentioning, right? Like word of mouth and referrals. For marketing and advertising, what are you currently doing besides that?
Like nothing. We're about to really transition over. So most of our growth has been word of mouth, which has been amazing. I shouldn't say nothing. We have had SEO through our website people for a while since we started. That's a company that I don't feel has been very communicative with me. It's like on this auto renewal, there's no like, hey, what like search URLs do you want to target? There's been no additions to the webpage in 4 years. So we just let them go. We're going to completely redo our website, new SEOs, and then hopefully dive into some maybe Google ads and maybe some Facebook marketing. That's the first goal as far as vamping up our marketing. But I really want to target some search engine, certain words and searches first, because we've
Mm,
now done that.
yeah. Okay. Interesting. So then your marketing budget, what does that look like?
I don't really have one. I have no idea. Right now, no, I have to really sit down and look at that because there's been a lot of new in the last 3 or 4 months. New IT company, a few new products. We're going with a new lab, the new website. So I feel like I'm kind of new overload right now. But once the website is up and running and I've settled the costs of all this new, I need to really sit down and look at what I can spend. I'm
Yeah.
definitely underspending by a landslide
Okay.
now. So there's lots of room, which is exciting.
So why is there so much new right now?
So our IT company just chronically not responding to things we needed. We were having to fix, I mean, I had to go over to Lowe's and buy like wiring and pigeon rivet, so things. We had this major chronic issue with our cone beam that
Mm-hmm.
they really dropped the ball on. They weren't backing up any of the images. It was chronic issues. That was that reason. The lab, it wasn't that we weren't happy with our lab, but we ended up just talking to a new lab. I really like their program. I'm excited about, again, it has a great communication platform. You're going to sell me on that when I can send a text to my lab, say, oh my gosh, I forgot this. Now we have to call, we get sent to the department. We hope they get it. There's a disconnect with that communication. This lab, it's so streamlined. The scanner talks to the system. We can upload from our phone. So again, the communication with the lab is there. The website, again, was because our website was not performing. There was zero communication from them with me about what do you want to do with the website? Are you happy with the SEO? What are your marketing goals? Nothing, like literally nothing. And then the other new is actually for the new website, we're doing a whole bunch of new brand photography, team photos, and that kind of stuff. And then other new is some, because we do Botox and we do fillers and we do a lot of that stuff in the practice too. And there's some new products that have just hit the market. And then the intro offers are just really great. So just a lot of new. So I do feel a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
but
Interesting.
I'll hopefully going to bring a lot of great with it.
Yeah. No, definitely. A lot of learning curves too. So then working with these companies, I guess from the moment you decided to do your startup till today, what have been some of the best companies you've partnered up with, and then some of the worst ones, or some of the ones where you feel like we didn't click? It's my fault, your fault, who knows, but it just didn't click.
So, as far as the best, honestly, which wasn't to begin with, it's been Banco, my supply company. My rep pops by every 2 to 3 weeks, always lets me know the specials. I've called him in a bind, like, oh my gosh, my handpiece went down. His wife happens to be a dentist, so he'll drive over to her office. And anytime I've needed something, he's been there. If I have questions about something, my curing lights, 3M had come in to show me a new product, and they were like, let's just test your curing lights. Well, they were all not performing like they should. I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I get myself some curing lights at a reasonable price? Oh, that's another big new purchase. So he's been super supportive, never had an issue. Anytime I've called him for anything, he's been there. So Benko definitely. Also, it's not really dental, but my Galderma rep, same thing. Anytime I need something from her, she's there to help. She gets me involved in a lot of continuing ed opportunities. So Galderma's been amazing. Oh, I hate to name drop as far as the bad ones, but our original IT company, I was very dissatisfied with, and I can name drop this one. They're not going anywhere. Patterson did my build out. Unbelievably disappointed in them because there's been not one follow-up. Like, how's the equipment running? Do you need anything? Nothing. So because I switched suppliers, I think they're just like, she's dead to us. But it's still, I spent $400,000 in equipment, probably way more than that, and not a single call. Like, how is everything going? Are you growing? Is the equipment? Nothing. Unbelievably disappointed in Patterson. And then, so my original CPA, and when I was building the practice, they're like, oh yeah, we've got your reps will do this. You send us this. Well, when I opened the doors, I was so busy doing everything. Like, it was 3, 4, 5 months in. I hadn't really been sending them anything. And then all of a sudden, I'm like 3, 4 months behind on my books. And then it was just a nightmare. When you're behind on accounting, but I don't know, right? I came like W-9 season in January. It was a nightmare. And so then having to retroactively get myself current, that was the worst.
So what was the CPA doing then in that time?
That is a fabulous question. They did end up refunding all my money, which they should have. But it was like, they just let me fall through the cracks, right? Like, hey, you've enrolled our services. You haven't sent us anything. Like, you need to start sending this. But I was just trying to stay afloat with the business. I had so many tasks that I didn't realize I would have. And so I just fell through the cracks. So that was a huge one. That was a big letdown. And then I used another verification and billing company. They're called Dentistry Support. They made an absolute disaster of my accounts receivable. And when I say disaster, there is no better word for it. There was incorrect postings. There was multiple wisdom tooth extraction paid. That check was posted 4 or 5 times to the same patient's ledger. So I would see my credits going up. There's no way these credits could be going up because that money's not going into my account. And then I would also, when the Change Healthcare breach happened and claims weren't going electronically, they were supposed to be following up every 2 weeks on outstanding claims, nothing. So it was almost I almost had 2 months of almost freezing of insurance reimbursement, which was very scary because money just stopped coming in other than patient payments. And so what I realized is they just weren't familiar with our software when they said they were. And so now I'm back to, unfortunately, doing the billing, which is a huge job on top of running the practice, because I just don't trust that with anyone after. When it comes to money, I feel like that has been the biggest learning curve as far as this startup. Having people you trust to post your payment, manage your money, manage your accounts, that's been a huge challenge.
Yeah. Have you gone through embezzlement or?
No, I trust my staff immensely. I do. Wisdom wants to take over the billing. I was like, ooh, I'm going to be a hard sell, because it took us almost 3 months to fix the damage they did. And they were only with us for 9.
Oh, wow. Man, that was pretty bad.
We had accounts receivable in the hundreds of thousands because of those errors. Oh, it was a nightmare.
They fixed it, or you had to fix it all? You let them go and you fixed it all?
Correct. And I was under contract with them. I almost had to pursue. Thankfully, they realized like I had so much supporting documentation of the errors. Like it was a no-brainer for them. Like they knew that they needed to let me out. They wanted me to sign an NDA. Or I was like, absolutely not. I
Hmm.
was like, absolutely not. You guys made an absolute disaster of my books and created so much trouble. And then it was things that like were past the ability where I could resubmit claims. I couldn't bill the patient because it was so long ago that it was unrealistic. Or I didn't have the proper verifications to justify to the patient, like, hey, we made a mistake. Oh, it was just a nightmare.
Man, that's tough. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Good advice. Good lessons too. Good advice.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of great services out there that do that. There really are. I think our situation, we use curves. Not a
mhm.
lot of them are familiar with it and how the ledgers work because it's different. I've used Open Dental, I've used Dentrix. They're all different. And I think that was a big factor is their lack of familiarity with the billing and curve and what they thought they were doing correctly. They just didn't. And then they also didn't necessarily understand the insurance systems that Curves uses too. So I think
Mm,
that is contributing factor.
gotcha. Okay. So then throughout this process, from the moment you decided to do the startup till today, to right now, what's been some of the biggest failures or setbacks or struggles that you've had to deal with?
Probably both of those things. Like the biggest struggle for sure, just as far as getting my accounting up to date and then recovering from the dentistry support. But then some staff members, I had a couple staff members that were ride or dies and were really good. And then kind of losing them.
Like they just left?
The relationship ended far more tumultuously than I would have ever wanted. That's never something that I like. I never like to part ways with someone in a bad way. But yeah, I had a couple employees because I think we had relationships outside of here that the friendship versus the employee lines got maybe a little blurred. And so, yeah, the relationships ended really poorly. And to me, that's a big failure because I never like to part ways with anyone on bad terms. As far as other failures, no, I think those are the big ones, the
Okay.
big that stand out.
Yeah. With the employee, did you mean like the lines got blurred with you as a leader? Like, hey, I'm your friend, kind of a thing. And then, okay. So then what lesson did you learn from that? Because I feel like there's a line between like, hey, we're friends, right? We're family kind of a thing. And then it's like, hey, no, I'm still your leader. I'm your boss. You got to respect it, right? Kind of a thing. Where's the line?
Oh, it's such a delicate line. It really is. So, one book I read right out of the gate is called Culture Code. Have you ever read that?
No, I have not.
So it's a great book about leadership. It definitely talks about blurring those lines a bit, but it talks about leading from a place of vulnerability. And so I do share the struggles I have as a practice owner with, say, if the schedule's empty or we're not meeting production numbers. So you have to put some of yourself on the table because then it just makes them more invested in the goal. It's a fine line. I don't know where that line is because I am friends with my staff. We spend a lot of time outside of the office together. I love them dearly. That is one thing that if you were to rank across the board, my team and our dynamic is unbelievable, unbelievable. But I don't micromanage them. If there's downtime and they're off goofing, like I know they know what's expected of them. So
Mm.
I don't micromanage their downtime. But when something like a patient did not have orthodontic coverage and we told her that she had $1,000, she didn't. And it was our fault. So I was like, this is on us, you guys. And so instead of getting angry with them, I've learned we have to figure out how this doesn't happen again. That tries to be my approach. Instead of like, you did this wrong. How can we together prevent this from happening again? What's the system we need to put in place to prevent this? And maybe that's how I've kept
Mm.
being able to be their friend and be close to them while also still holding them accountable. My assistants are significantly younger. That helps. The one assistant I lost was nearer in age. So I think that aligns a little more too, because life wise, we were in similar places. So it does help that they are younger. I don't think they're ever going to see me as like best friend. I'm going to be almost like a mom friend, right? And
Mm.
so it helps keep a few of those lines separate. So I don't know. I don't know where that line is. It's so, and I've been burned by it because I've been hurt with these people leaving, right? And when you invest so much into them. And I don't ever want to own or run a practice where I don't have that kind of relationship with my staff. Like if I'll
Yeah.
keep teeter-tottering on it.
No, but it's good. It's good. I like how you do that. It keeps unity. Instead of like blaming, you decide to find a solution, right? Because I think they say that's like one of the top three things that disrupts unity is blaming, number one, right?
Right.
So I think that's fantastic. Now, with these questions, is just to get to know a little bit more of you, right? So one of the questions we wanted to ask you is time travel. If you can go back in time and give your starting out self one piece of advice, but it can't be business related, what would it be?
Trust your gut. Every decision I was hesitant about, oh, you shouldn't hire this person, or this person shouldn't be fired, or, oh, this person, everything. If I've gone against what my gut feeling, it's been wrong. Trust your gut. Wholeheartedly trust your gut. And I'm a person of faith, so trust what God is trying to tell you. That is that communication. And so I've ignored it. Every time I've ignored it, I have been wrong.
Really? Interesting.
Life and this practice. And honestly, some of that's just trusting in myself. I think with some of just my earlier years, childhood, I didn't always trust in myself. And so it's taken me doing probably this practice to realize like, you can trust in you, trust in your processes, trust you worked so hard to get here. You're not going to fail now. Like you've made a lot of good decisions. Just trust in that. And you're going to make wrong ones, but you're going to recover from them. So yeah, trust like that, hands down.
Okay, I like that. It's almost like that. Have you ever heard of that saying where you didn't come this far just to get this far?
God would not let me fail right now. He would not have put me in this position to let me fail. It's not going to happen. And I just have to remember these things.
Okay. Now, undercover boss. If you went undercover in your own company for a week, what do you think you'd discover that would shock you the most?
I think what would shock me the most is actually how well they would do without me and all these systems. I have a lot of anxiety about bringing on another doctor and leaving the practice without me here, but they're such hardworking. We have all our systems in place. So I think I would be like, well, dang, you guys don't even need me. So I think that's what would surprise me the most. I know there's talk about how teams don't work as hard when you're not around. I think mine would surprise me and that they wouldn't want to let me down. I think they would be like, you know what, she's not here. Let's show her she can trust us. Like I really feel that way about them. I feel they're that solid of a group. That would place myself and take the time off, right?
Yeah. No, but that's a beautiful feeling to feel like that. No, really, for real. Okay. And then finally, the unsend button. If you had an unsend button for any decision you made in your life or business, what moment would you use it on and why?
Definitely hiring dentistry support. That was the biggest amount of stress I can remember enduring with this practice.
Really?
Yeah, because cash flow essentially stopped for 2 months. Very stressful when you have payroll. Thank goodness for savings and having been to a point where the business had been able to save. But if that had happened a year prior, or even, I don't know that payroll would have gone through. I don't know that I would have been able to stay afloat. Because that was, $100,000-ish in the hole. Basic expenses. So yeah, unsend, absolutely. Like,
big time.
Not the right company for you. So yeah, that probably off the top of my head and the most recent, I think that would be it.
Was that like a gut feeling when you were signing up with them?
No, I was like, this is going to be great. So clearly I didn't follow. That doesn't answer. That doesn't go with the first one. And I interviewed all the companies. So no, I thought I did my due diligence on that one really well. So that one did not fit the mold.
Yeah, it's still some are gonna fall through the cracks, right? Like it's just, you hope for the best, and man, but that was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was bad. It's just a lot of financial stress. I don't know if we talked about this, but I have 3 teenagers at home. My husband's a pilot, and so he's gone a lot. I was like trying to run this business, deal with that, and him being gone, it was like, I'm going to get through this period. So it was just a lot.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, you've gone through a lot, Landi. Man, that's a lot. But now, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. We appreciate it. If anybody wants to reach out to you, pick your brain a little bit more, where can they find you?
I guess probably the easiest is Facebook Messenger, just under my name, my personal account. Drop me a message. It's probably the easiest way to find me.
All right. So that's going to be in the show notes below. And Landi, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you.